Anthony took my keys. He says I'm medically unfit to drive. Those were the words that finally broke the silence. My name is Kiara. I am 26 years old. On a Tuesday afternoon, I was walking along the dirty shoulder of Route 9. Cars were flying past me at 60 miles per hour, kicking up dust and gravel. My 2-year-old son, Noah, was strapped heavily to my chest. My legs were shaking, but I kept walking. I had to keep walking. Suddenly, a large truck slammed onto the gravel ahead of me. The tires screeched. I knew that truck. My father jumped out. He is the police chief in our town. In that moment, he didn't look like a tough officer. He looked like a terrified parent. "Kiara," he shouted, running toward me. He grabbed my shoulders. "What are you doing? Where's your vehicle?" I couldn't lie anymore. I was too tired to make up an excuse. I looked him in the eye and whispered the truth. "Anthony took my keys, Dad. He said I'm not allowed to leave the house." My father's face went pale. Then it went dark. He realized this wasn't a car problem. This was a siege. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Hi, my name is Kiara. I'm 26 years old, and I live in the United States. I sat in the passenger seat of my father's truck. The air conditioning was blasting, drying the sweat on my forehead. My son, Noah, was asleep in my lap. He was heavy, warm, and safe, but I was shivering. My hands were shaking so hard I had to clasp them together between my knees just to keep them still. My father, the chief of police, didn't start the engine immediately. He just stared at me. He looked at my dusty shoes. He looked at the sunburn on my shoulders. He looked at the way I flinched when he reached for his water bottle. "Kiara," he said softly, "talk to me." I wanted to tell him everything, but I didn't know where to start. Because the truth was, Anthony didn't hit me. He didn't scream at me. If he had hit me, I would have left sooner. If he had screamed, I would have known it was abuse. But Anthony was smart. He was quiet. And his mother, Susan, was even smarter. It started so slowly that I didn't even feel it happening. It was like the temperature in a room dropping 1 degree at a time. You don't notice you're freezing until your teeth are chattering. I looked out the window at the cornfields passing by Route 9 and my mind went back 2 years. That was when it began. It started when I was pregnant with Noah. I was tired all the time. My ankles were swollen. I was working part-time at a library, a job I loved. I loved the smell of the books. I loved talking to the regulars. It was my own money, my own world. One night, Anthony came home with takeout. He set the table. He lit a candle. He looked so caring, so perfect. "Babe," he said, pouring me a glass of water, "I've been thinking, you look exhausted. The doctor said your blood pressure is up." "I'm okay," I said. "Just pregnancy tired." "I don't want you to be just okay," he said. He took my hand across the table. His grip was warm. "I want you to be safe. My mom and I were talking. We think you should quit the library. Just until the baby comes, you need to rest." "But I like the library," I said, "and I like the extra money." "We don't need the money," Anthony said. "I got that raise, and my mom said she'd come over more to help with the house. You shouldn't be on your feet. Please, Kiara, do it for the baby." That was the first key. Do it for the baby. So I quit. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought I was lucky to have a husband who wanted me to rest. Then Susan started coming over. At first it was once a week. Then it was 3 times a week. Then it was every day. She didn't knock. She had a key. Anthony gave it to her without asking me. "I just gave Mom a key for emergencies," he had told me casually one morning while brushing his teeth. "In case you go into labor and I'm at work." It made sense. Everything they did always made sense. But then Susan started changing things. I would come into the kitchen and find my spices rearranged. I would find my laundry folded but put in the wrong drawers. "I'm just helping," she would say with a tight smile. "You're so big now, Kiara, you shouldn't be bending down." After Noah was born, the fog got thicker. I was sleep-deprived. I was emotional. I was trying to figure out breastfeeding and sleeping schedules. One afternoon, about 3 months after Noah was born, I couldn't find my debit card. I looked everywhere. I looked in my purse, on the counter, in the diaper bag. I called Anthony at work, panicked. "Anthony, I can't find my card. I need to go buy diapers." "Oh," he said, his voice calm. "I have it, honey." "You have it? Why? I noticed you were spending a lot on random things at Target," he said. "You're stressed, you're not sleeping." Mom said she saw packages arriving every day. "I think it's better if I manage the finances for a while, just until your hormones settle down." Just until your hormones settle down. I felt a flash of anger. "I'm not crazy, Anthony. I just bought onesies." I know, babe, I know, but we need to save for Noah's college. I'm just trying to protect our future. If you need anything, just ask me, or ask Mom. She can pick it up for you. I argued, I cried. But he didn't budge. He just kept saying he was doing it for me. He made me feel guilty for wanting control over my own money. He made me feel like a brat, so I stopped asking. Then it was the car. I had a Honda CR-V. It was mine. I bought it before we got married. It was my freedom. 6 months ago, I got a flat tire. It was a simple flat. I called Anthony. He came and changed it. But the next morning, the keys were gone. Where are my keys? I asked. The car needs work, Anthony said. The axle looked bent. It's not safe to drive with Noah in the back. Okay, I said. When will it be fixed? I'm waiting on parts, he said. A week went by, then a month, then 3 months. Every time I asked, there was a new excuse. The mechanic was backed up. The part was on backorder. It was too expensive right now. Why do you need to drive anyway? Susan asked me one day while she was folding my underwear in my bedroom. You have everything here. Anthony brings the groceries. I bring the diapers. Where do you need to go? I just want to leave the house, I said. That sounds like postpartum depression, Susan said, shaking her head. You're restless. You should talk to the doctor about that. Anthony says you've been acting erratic. Erratic. That was their favorite word. If I cried because I was lonely, I was erratic. If I got mad because Susan threw away my favorite shirt, I was erratic. If I wanted to see my friends, I was erratic. My friends stopped calling. Anthony told them I was overwhelmed and needed space. He told them I wasn't up for visitors. They don't understand what it's like to be a mother, he told me. They're single, they're jealous of your life. They just want to drag you down. You don't need that negativity. So I stopped texting them back. Eventually, my phone stopped buzzing. The final straw was the phone itself. 2 weeks ago, Anthony put a tracking app on it. It's for safety, he said, in case you get lost walking with the stroller. But it wasn't just tracking. He could see my texts. He could see my search history. I stopped looking up divorce lawyers. I stopped looking up emotional abuse. I was afraid he would see it. I was trapped in a beautiful house with a full fridge and a husband who claimed to love me, but I was dying inside. I was a ghost in my own life. Sitting in my dad's truck, looking at the dashboard, I realized how small my world had become. It had shrunk down to the 4 walls of that house. Anthony didn't hit me. He just took away my job, my money, my car, my friends, and my privacy. He took away my voice. He convinced me I was sick. He convinced me I was weak. He convinced me I couldn't survive without him. But today, when I asked for the keys to go to the park, and he laughed and put them in his pocket, something inside me snapped. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just waited until he went to the bathroom. I strapped Noah to my chest. I opened the front door, and I started walking. I walked 5 miles before my dad found me. It wasn't one big fight, Dad, I whispered, staring at my hands. It was 1,000 little things. They took pieces of me until there was nothing left. My father sat there in silence for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the soft breathing of my son. My dad has been a cop for 30 years. He has seen everything. He has seen accidents, robberies, fights. He is a man of action. He likes clear problems with clear solutions. But this was messy. This was family. He turned his body toward me. The leather of the seat creaked. Kiara, he said, his voice very low. I need you to answer some questions, and I need you to be completely honest. Don't protect him. Don't think about his feelings. Just answer me. I nodded. Does he control your access to money? Yes, I said. I don't have a card. I don't have cash. If I need milk, I have to ask him or Susan. Dad's jaw tightened. A small muscle in his cheek jumped. Does he monitor your communication, your phone, your email? Yes, he has my passwords. He checks my texts every night. He says it's for transparency. Does he prevent you from leaving the house? The car, I said. He says it's broken, but I saw him driving it last week to the store. He told me I imagined it. He said I'm medically unfit to drive because of my anxiety. Who diagnosed you with anxiety? Dad asked sharply. He did. And Susan, they said I'm unstable. Dad hit the steering wheel. It was a sharp, hard smack. Noah stirred in my lap but didn't wake up. Unstable, Dad repeated. He looked out the windshield, his eyes narrowing. He wasn't looking at the road anymore. He was looking at a crime scene in his head. Dad, maybe I am, I said, my voice trembling. Maybe I'm overreacting. He provides for us. He buys the food. He pays the mortgage. Maybe I'm just ungrateful. That's what Susan says. Dad turned to me, his eyes were fierce. Kiara, listen to me closely. This is not marriage, this is not protection. He pointed a finger at the dashboard. In my line of work, we have a name for this. When someone cuts off your resources, isolates you from your support system, monitors your movements, and gaslights you into thinking you're crazy, that is not love. He took a deep breath. That is a siege. The word hung in the air, siege, like a castle surrounded by enemies, starved until it surrenders. They isolated you, Dad said, his voice rising slightly. They cut the lines. They controlled the movement. They took the vehicle. They took the money. This wasn't help, Kiara, it was entrapment. I felt tears pricking my eyes. I thought I was going crazy, Dad, I really did. You're not crazy, he said firmly. You're exhausted, you're beaten down. There is a difference. He put the truck into gear, the engine roared. We're not going to my house yet, he said. My stomach dropped. What, where are we going? We are going back, he said. Panic shot through me. My heart started hammering against my ribs. No, Dad, no, I can't go back there, please, Anthony will be so mad. Susan is there, they'll talk me out of it. They always talk me out of it. They'll say I'm having a breakdown. They'll take Noah. They are not taking my grandson, Dad said. His voice was cold steel. And they are not talking you out of anything. He pulled the truck onto the road and made a sharp U-turn. The tires crunched on the gravel. We were heading back toward the house. Back toward the prison. I need you to be brave for 1 hour, Kiara, Dad said. We are going there to get your things. We are going to get your documents. We are going to get the diaper bag. And we are going to get your keys. He won't give them to me, I said. He says they're lost. He'll give them to me, Dad said. I looked at my father. He wasn't just my dad right now. He was the chief. He sat straighter. His hands were steady on the wheel. This ends today, he said. You are 26 years old. You are a free citizen. Nobody has the right to lock you in a house. Not a husband. Not a mother-in-law. Nobody. As we drove closer to the house, the dread filled my chest like black water. I knew the script. I knew exactly what they would say. Anthony would look concerned. Susan would look pitying. They would treat me like a hysterical child. Dad, I said, be careful, they lie so well. I know liars, Dad said. I interview them every day. We turned onto my street. The neighborhood looked perfect. Green lawns, white fences, sprinklers hissing in the afternoon sun. It looked like the American dream. But as we pulled into the driveway, I saw the truth. It wasn't a home. It was a stage set. And I was the prop they wanted to keep on the shelf. Anthony's car was in the driveway. Susan's car was right behind it. Dad put the truck in park. He turned off the engine. Do not let them separate us, Dad said. Stay by my side. If they try to take Noah, you step behind me, understand? Yes, I whispered. Dad unbuckled his seatbelt. He looked at me one last time before opening the door. Let's go get your life back. Walking up the driveway felt like walking into a lion's den. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through mud. I clutched Noah so tight he grunted in his sleep. Dad walked slightly ahead of me. He didn't walk like a guest. He walked like he was serving a warrant. The front door opened before we even reached the steps. Anthony was standing there. He was wearing a polo shirt and khaki shorts. He looked handsome. He looked calm. He looked annoyed, but in a patient way, like a parent dealing with a toddler. Susan was behind him. She was holding a glass of white wine. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. She looked effortless. Kiara, Anthony sighed. He shook his head. We were so worried, I was about to call the police. I brought the police, Dad said. He stepped up onto the porch. He didn't smile. He didn't offer to shake hands. Anthony blinked. He looked at Dad, then at me. Chief, Anthony said, using my dad's title but with a hint of sarcasm. I'm sorry you had to be dragged into this. Kiara is having a day. She stormed out. It's the hormones again. We're trying to get her back on her medication. I'm not on medication, I said from behind Dad. My voice was small, but I said it. See, Susan said. She took a sip of wine. Denial, it's part of the condition. Hi, Frank. Would you like some iced tea? We're just trying to calm everyone down. I don't want tea, Susan, Dad said. I want Kiara's keys. The air on the porch went still. Anthony chuckled nervously. Her keys. Frank, look, the car isn't safe. I told her that, I'm protecting her. The axle, where is the car? Dad asked. He looked around the driveway. I don't see her Honda. It's at the shop, Anthony said quickly. Jerry's auto. Down on Main. Really? Dad said. Because I passed Jerry's on the way here. The lot was empty. Anthony paused. He licked his lips. Well, maybe he moved it to the back. Look, this is a marriage matter. We appreciate your concern, but Kiara is my wife. I know what's best for her. She's an adult, Dad said. She wants to leave. She needs her keys to leave. If the car is at the shop, give her the receipt. Give her the claim ticket. Give her the house keys so she can come and go. She can't handle the responsibility right now, Susan chimed in. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Frank, look at her. She's dirty. She's sweaty. She walked on the highway with a baby. Does that look like a sane person to you? We took the keys for her own safety. Just like we manage the bills, she gets confused. I'm not confused, I yelled. It surprised me. It surprised them. I walked on the highway because I had no choice, I said, my voice shaking. You trapped me here. You tracked my phone. You took my money. Anthony stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Kiara, stop yelling. You're scaring Noah. Give me the baby. You're hysterical. Dad's arm shot out. It was a fast, hard barrier between Anthony and me. Don't touch her, Dad said. His voice dropped an octave. It was the voice he used when a suspect was about to run. This is my house, Anthony said, his face reddening. And that is my son. You can't just come here and dictate things. Actually, I can, Dad said. Because what I'm hearing isn't a marriage dispute. What I'm hearing is coercive control. I'm hearing unlawful restraint. That's ridiculous, Susan laughed. We're family. Where are her keys? Dad asked again. He spaced the words out. Where are her keys? Anthony crossed his arms. He leaned back against the doorframe. He thought he still had the power. He thought because he was the husband, he was the law in this house. I don't know where they are, Anthony lied. She probably lost them. She loses everything. Check your pockets, Dad said. Excuse me, check your pockets, Anthony. I will not, Anthony spat. This is harassment. Kiara, Dad said, not taking his eyes off Anthony. Go inside. Pack a bag, pack for a week. Clothes for you, clothes for Noah. Get your documents, birth certificates, social security cards, passport. I don't know where they are, I said. Susan keeps them in the safe. Dad looked at Susan. Open the safe, he said. I forgot the combination, Susan said, looking at her nails. Dad pulled out his phone. Okay, he said calmly. Then I'll call a unit. We can do this as a civil standby. I'll have 2 officers here in 10 minutes to supervise her retrieving her property. And if you refuse to hand over her identification documents, that's theft. We can file a report right here on the porch. Your neighbors will love the flashing lights. Susan's smile faltered. She cared about appearances more than anything. The idea of police cars in her driveway, in front of the homeowners association president next door, terrified her. Fine, she hissed. You're being so dramatic, Frank. She turned and walked into the house. Go with her, Kiara, Dad said. Get your things, I'll stay here with Anthony. I stepped past Anthony. He glared at me. His eyes were full of hate. It was the first time he let the mask slip completely. He looked at me like I was a rebellious servant, not a wife. You'll regret this, he whispered as I passed him. You'll be back. You can't survive out there. I didn't answer. I walked into the house. It smelled like lavender and bleach. It smelled like the place where I had slowly disappeared. I went to the bedroom. I grabbed a duffel bag. I threw in Noah's diapers, his wipes, his favorite bear. I threw in jeans for me, t-shirts, underwear. I didn't fold anything. I just shoved it in. I went to the study. Susan was unlocking the safe. She threw my passport and Noah's birth certificate onto the desk. Ungrateful, she muttered. We did everything for you. We gave you a beautiful life, and you throw it away because you're selfish. I grabbed the papers. My hands were shaking, but I held them tight. I didn't want a beautiful life, I said to her back. I wanted my life. I ran back to the front door. Dad was still standing there, a wall between Anthony and the world. I got them, I said. Good, Dad said. Let's go. But Anthony moved. He stepped in front of the stairs. He blocked the path to the truck. Kiara can leave, he said. His voice was shaking with rage now. If she wants to ruin her life, fine, but she is not taking my son. The air grew heavy. The birds stopped singing. It felt like the world had frozen. He is my son, Anthony said. I am his father. I do not consent to him leaving this property. He looked at me. Put him down, Kiara. Give him to my mother. You can go play victim at your dad's house, but Noah stays here where he's safe. I held Noah tighter. He was waking up now, lifting his head, looking around with sleepy eyes. No, I said. Give him to me. Anthony stepped forward, his hand reaching out. Dad moved faster than I thought a man of his age could move. He stepped right into Anthony's space. He didn't touch him, but he was close enough that Anthony had to step back. Back off, Dad said. It wasn't a request. This is kidnapping. Susan shrieked from the doorway. She had her phone out. I'm recording this. You're kidnapping my grandson. Frank, you can't do this. Anthony pointed a finger at Dad's chest. She is mentally unstable. If you let her take him, I will sue you. I will have your badge. I will tell the court you aided a kidnapping. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. The legal threats terrified me. Anthony always sounded so sure, so knowledgeable. He made me feel like I was always breaking rules I didn't understand. Dad, I whispered. Can I take him? Is it legal? Dad didn't look at me. He kept his eyes locked on Anthony. Are you divorced, Anthony? Dad asked. What? No. Is there a custody order signed by a judge? No, but is there a court mandate restricting her access to the child? She's unfit. That's not what I asked, Dad barked. Is there a signed court order? No, Anthony yelled. Then both parents have equal rights, Dad said calmly. She has just as much right to take him as you have to keep him. It is not kidnapping for a mother to take her child out of a dangerous environment. Dangerous? Anthony laughed. Look at this house, it's perfect. She's the danger. Dad lowered his voice. It became deadly quiet. Let's talk about danger, Anthony. Let's talk about the law. Dad held up one finger. Withholding her keys to prevent her from leaving, that is unlawful restraint. In this state, it's a Class A misdemeanor. He held up a second finger. Blocking her movement, preventing her from walking out that gate, that is false imprisonment. He held up a third finger. You lied to a police officer about the location of her vehicle. You said it was at a shop that I know is empty. Obstruction of justice. He took a step closer to Anthony. And if you put one hand on her to try and physically take that child from her arms, I will arrest you for domestic assault right here on your own front lawn. And I will make sure you spend the night in a cell with men who don't like men who bully women. Anthony's face went white. His confidence cracked. He looked at Susan, but she had lowered her phone. She looked scared. They were bullies. And bullies only understand strength. They thought they could use words and rules to trap me. They didn't realize that my father knew the rules better than they did. You're bluffing, Anthony whispered, but his voice was weak. Try me, Dad said. Touch her, see what happens. Anthony looked at his hands. He looked at me. For a second I saw him calculate. He realized he had lost control. The game was over. He stepped aside. It wasn't a big movement, just one step to the left. But it was a surrender. Fine, Anthony spat. Go leave, but this isn't over. I'll get a lawyer. I'll take everything. You'll be begging on the street, Kiara. You'll be back crawling to me in a week. Don't listen, Dad said to me. Walk. Now, I hurried down the steps. I walked past Anthony. I could smell his cologne. It used to smell like safety. Now it smelled like a trap. I walked to the truck. I opened the door and put Noah in his car seat. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to click the buckle. Mama, Noah said. It's okay, baby, I said. We're going for a ride. I climbed into the passenger seat and locked the door. Dad backed down the driveway. He didn't look at Anthony. He didn't look at Susan. He just drove. As we pulled away, I looked in the side mirror. Anthony was standing in the driveway watching us. He looked small. He looked angry. But he was getting smaller and smaller as we drove away. Dad, I said, letting out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 2 years. Thank you. Dad reached over and squeezed my hand. We're not done yet, he said. Getting out is the first step. Staying out is the hard part, but you have proof now. Proof? I asked. I just have my clothes. Dad smiled a grim smile. No, you have something else. When you were packing, you grabbed the folder from the safe, right? Just the passports, I said. Check the side pocket of your bag, Dad said. I looked down. There was a thick blue folder sticking out of the duffel bag. I hadn't put it there. I saw it on the desk while Susan was yelling at you, Dad said. I swiped it. It looked like financial records, bank statements, loan documents. I opened the folder. My eyes widened. It wasn't just boring papers. It was everything. There were transfers from my savings account to Susan's account. There were credit card applications in my name that I never signed. There were emails printed out between Anthony and Susan discussing how to manage me. Email from Susan. Move the trust fund money before she notices. Tell her the bank made an error. Email from Anthony. I'll disable her car next week. She's asking too many questions. I gasped. Dad, look at this. I told you, Dad said, his eyes on the road. They weren't protecting you, they were robbing you. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. It replaced the fear. I wasn't just a victim anymore, I was a witness. And I held the evidence in my lap. I wasn't weak, I said to myself, reading the emails where they called me stupid and fragile. I was just trusting. You're safe now, Dad said, but I knew the fight was just starting. Anthony said he would get a lawyer. He said he would take everything. I looked at the folder. Let him try, I thought. Let him try. The drive to my father's house was the longest 20 minutes of my life. My hands were shaking so hard that they vibrated against my legs. Every time a car appeared in the rearview mirror, my breath hitched. I expected to see Anthony's silver sedan. I expected to see him swerving behind us, honking, demanding I pull over. But the road remained empty behind us. It was just me, my dad, and the hum of the tires on the asphalt. We pulled up to the house I grew up in. It was a small ranch-style house with peeling blue paint and a porch that leaned slightly to the left. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a magazine cover like Anthony's house. But as soon as the engine cut off, I felt my lungs expand. It smelled like pine needles and old rain. It smelled like safety. We're here, Dad said. He didn't just hop out. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, letting the adrenaline fade. You're okay, Kiara. You're home, I unbuckled Noah. He was wide awake now, kicking his little legs. Grandpa's house, he chirped. Yeah, buddy, I whispered, burying my face in his soft hair. Grandpa's house. We went inside. The house was exactly as I remembered it. The same brown carpet. The same recliner with the duct tape on the armrest. It was messy. There were newspapers on the table and coffee cups in the sink. In Anthony's house, a coffee cup in the sink was a crime. It was evidence of my laziness. Here it was just a cup. Sit, Dad ordered gently. He pointed to the kitchen table. I'm going to make you a sandwich. You look like you haven't eaten in a week. I'm not hungry, I said automatically. That was my reflex. Deny needs, be small, be low maintenance. I didn't ask if you were hungry, Dad said, opening the fridge. I said I'm making you a sandwich, turkey or ham. Turkey, I whispered. I sat at the wooden table. The blue folder, the one Dad had swiped from the safe, sat in the middle of the table like a bomb. I stared at it. For the last 2 years, I had convinced myself that I was the problem. I told myself I was forgetful. I told myself I was bad with money. I told myself I was too emotional to handle the adult responsibilities. Anthony had taken that burden from me, right? He was the hero carrying the weight of the bills and the decisions so I could just be a mother. But looking at that folder, a cold, hard feeling started to rise in my chest. I wasn't just a mother. I was a woman who used to manage a library budget. I was a woman who got straight A's in college. I was a woman who had lived on her own for 3 years before I met Anthony. I wasn't stupid. I had been made stupid. I reached out and opened the folder. Dad placed a plate in front of me, a turkey sandwich cut into triangles, just like he used to do when I was 10. He sat down opposite me with a glass of water. Eat, he said, and read. I took a bite of the sandwich. It tasted like ash in my mouth, but I swallowed it. Then I pulled out the first paper. It was a bank transfer receipt, dated 6 months ago. Transfer. $4,500. From Kiara's personal savings. To Susan Miller, I blinked. $4,500. That was the money I had saved from my library job. That was my emergency fund. I remembered that day. I had asked Anthony if we could buy a new crib for Noah because the old one was wobbly. He had sighed and said, Babe, money is really tight right now. We have to be careful, maybe next month. Money was tight. He had just sent my entire savings to his mother. I flipped to the next page. It was an email printout. Anthony must have printed it for his records. He was meticulous like that. He kept files on everything. From Susan to Anthony's subject, the car issue, she's asking about the Honda again. You need to handle it. If she has the car, she'll start going to those mommy groups again. Those women put ideas in her head. Tell her the transmission is shot. I'll call Jerry and have him fake an invoice if you need it. Just keep her home. She's safer there. I felt sick, physically sick. They weren't worried about my safety. They were worried about my freedom. They were worried that if I talked to other people, someone might say, hey, that's not normal. I looked up at Dad. He was watching me read, his face grim. They planned it, I whispered. Dad, they actually planned it. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't because I was sick. No, Dad said. It was a strategy. I kept reading. There were texts. Anthony, she's crying again, wants to know why she can't have her debit card. Susan, tell her she overdrank the account last month. Make her feel guilty. If she feels guilty, she stops asking. I remembered that conversation. I had spent 3 days apologizing to Anthony for spending too much on groceries. I had cried in his lap, promising to be better. He had stroked my hair and told me he forgave me. He forgave me, for a mistake I never made. The anger hit me then. It wasn't a flash of fire. It was a slow, heavy burn. It started in my stomach and moved up to my throat. I stood up, I paced around the small kitchen. I thought I was crazy, I said. My voice was getting louder. I thought I was losing my mind. I used to lie in bed awake at night wondering what was wrong with me. I thought I had early onset dementia or something. I couldn't remember spending the money. I couldn't remember breaking the car. I slammed my hand down on the table. Noah jumped in his high chair, but he didn't cry. He just watched me. I didn't do any of it, I shouted. They did it to me. Dad didn't tell me to calm down, he nodded. Let it out, Kiara, get angry. Anger is better than fear. Anger gets things done. I grabbed the papers and spread them out on the table. Look at this, Dad, I said, pointing to a credit card statement. This is a card in my name. I never opened this card. Look at the charges. Liquor store. Golf pro shop. A nail salon in the city. I don't golf. I haven't had a manicure in 2 years. Dad leaned in, putting on his reading glasses. That's identity theft, he said. If they used your social security number to open that line of credit without your consent, that is a federal crime. And this, I said, pulling out a medical bill. Therapy sessions. I never went to therapy. Anthony told me he was going to therapy for his stress. He was billing it to my insurance. No, wait, this says patient, Kiara Miller. But I never went. Insurance fraud, Dad said. They were building a paper trail. If you ever tried to leave, they could pull these records and say, look, she's been in intensive therapy for instability for years. I sat back down, breathless. I wasn't weak. That was the realization that changed everything. I had survived a psychological war. I had raised a toddler while being gaslit every single day. I had managed to keep my son fed, clothed, and loved while my own husband was systematically deleting my identity. I looked at the folder. It wasn't just proof of their crimes, it was proof of my sanity. I'm not the victim anymore, I said to Dad. I'm the prosecutor, Dad smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. That's my girl. Now keep reading, because I have a feeling it gets worse. And it did. The afternoon sun was fading, casting long shadows across the kitchen table. The pile of papers was messy, but the picture they painted was crystal clear. We had found the small thefts, the grocery money, the credit card charges, the lies about my mental health. But then I found the envelope at the very back of the folder. It was sealed. It had "Do not open" written on it in Anthony's handwriting. If I was the old Kiara, the Kiara from yesterday, I would have put it back. I would have been too afraid to disobey a direct order written in Sharpie. But the old Kiara was gone. She was left on the side of Route 9. I ripped the envelope open. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a bill of sale. Item, 2018 Honda CR-V. Seller, Anthony Miller, power of attorney. Buyer, CarMax. Date, 4 months ago. Sale price, $18,500. My mouth fell open. He sold it, I gasped. Dad, he sold my car. He told me it was in the shop waiting for a transmission part. He told me that every single week for 4 months. Just waiting on the part, babe. Supply chain issues, babe. I looked at the date. 4 months ago, the day after I got the flat tire. He didn't even fix the flat. He just sold the whole car. Power of attorney? Dad asked, looking at the document. Did you sign a power of attorney? No, I said. Never. Dad took the paper. He squinted at the signature at the bottom. It was my name. Kiara Miller, but the loop on the K was wrong. I make my K's sharp. This one was round and bubbly. Susan, I said. That's Susan's handwriting. She forged my signature. Grand theft auto, Dad said, his voice flat. And forgery, that's 2 felonies right there. My car wasn't broken. It was gone. Someone else was driving it right now. They had taken my freedom, sold it for $18,000 and put the money where? I grabbed the second document. It was a bank statement for an account I didn't recognize. Account holder, Susan Miller. Deposit, $18,500 CarMax. Payment, $5,000 Chase credit card. Payment, $3,000 Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. Payment, $1,200 Wine Club. They went on a cruise, I whispered. Dad, remember when they went to the Bahamas last month? They said it was a business trip for Anthony. They said his company paid for it. They paid for it with my car. I felt tears burning my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure shock. The level of entitlement was staggering. They looked at me and saw an ATM. They saw a resource to be harvested. Keep going, Dad said. What's the third paper? The third paper was thicker. It looked official. It had a legal seal on the top. Beneficiary Trust Adjustment Form. Account the Eleanor Davis Trust. My heart stopped. Eleanor Davis was my grandmother. She died 5 years ago. She wasn't rich, but she had saved every penny she earned as a nurse. She left me a trust fund. It wasn't millions, but it was significant. It was supposed to be $40,000. It was meant for a down payment on a house one day, or for Noah's college. I had never touched it. I wanted it to grow. I read the document. Request for full liquidation. Reason, medical emergency/hardship. Amount withdrawn, $41,200 closing balance. Deposit to joint checking Anthony and Kiara Miller. I scrambled for the joint checking statement in the pile. I found it. There was the deposit, $41,200, and the very next day a transfer out, $40,000 to Miller Investment LLC. What is Miller Investment LLC? I asked Dad. I don't know, Dad said, but I can guess who owns it. He pulled out his phone and opened a browser. He typed in the Secretary of State's business search. Here it is, Dad said. Miller Investment LLC. Registered agent Anthony Miller, address his house. He stole Grandma's money, I said. My voice broke. That money was love. That money was my grandmother's tired feet after double shifts. That money was her legacy to me, and Anthony had taken it to play businessman. And look at the reason, Dad pointed out. Medical emergency. What emergency? There wasn't one, I yelled. He lied to the bank, Dad said. Wire fraud, bank fraud. I sat back, feeling heavy. The betrayal was so complete. It wasn't just that he was controlling. It was that he was a criminal. He had stripped me of everything. My car, my savings, my inheritance. If I had stayed another year, I would have been destitute. I would have been 40 years old with zero credit, zero assets, and zero history. I would have been completely trapped. I owe $40,000 somewhere, I realized suddenly. Dad, if he took the money, did he pay the taxes? Did he wait? I shuffled the papers again. I found one last document stuck to the back of the trust fund paper. It was a loan application. Lender, Quick Cash Online. Borrower, Kiara Miller. Amount, $40,000. Interest rate, 18%. My hands went cold. He didn't just take the money, I said. He took out a loan in my name too. A high-interest loan, $40,000. Why would he do that if he already stole the trust fund? Dad looked at the dates. He stole the trust fund a year ago, Dad said. He probably spent it, bad investments, gambling, who knows. Then he needed more money, so he took out a loan in your name to cover his tracks or to pay off his own debts. I'm in debt, I said. I'm 26 and I'm $40,000 in debt to a loan shark company, and I don't have a car and I don't have a job. I put my head in my hands. The weight of it was crushing. Dad, how do I fix this? My credit is ruined. I can't rent an apartment. I can't get a car loan. They destroyed me. Dad reached across the table and pulled my hands away from my face. They didn't destroy you, he said sternly. They tried to bury you. But they forgot one thing. What? They forgot that you are a fighter, and they forgot that your father is the police chief. He stood up and walked to the wall phone, the old landline he still kept. What are you doing? I asked. I'm calling the district attorney, Dad said. I'm not calling as a father. I'm calling as an officer who has just uncovered a massive fraud ring operating out of 124 Oak Street. He dialed the number. But Dad, I said, Anthony is coming. He said he would come. Good, Dad said. Let him come. I want him to see the handcuffs. Just then, my cell phone buzzed. It was the first time it had buzzed in weeks because Anthony usually kept it. I had grabbed it from the counter when I ran. I looked at the screen. Incoming call, Anthony. I stared at it. The name used to make me smile, then it used to make me nervous. Now it just made me sick. Answer it, Dad said. Put it on speaker. I pressed the green button. Kiara, Anthony's voice filled the kitchen. He sounded different. He wasn't using his soft, manipulative voice. He sounded panicked. I'm here, I said. You made a big mistake, Anthony said. You took a folder from my office. That's theft, Kiara. That's my property. It contains sensitive business information. It contains my bank statements, I said, and my trust fund records. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. You don't understand what you're looking at, Anthony said quickly. Those are drafts, hypothetical plans. I was moving money around to maximize interest rates for us. For our future. You sold my car to CarMax, I said. Is that a hypothetical plan because I'm pretty sure CarMax has the title? I did that for you, Anthony screamed. He lost his cool. The car was unsafe. I was going to buy you a Volvo, a safer car. I was waiting for the right deal. You spent the money on a cruise with your mother, I said. You ungrateful little. Stop, Susan's voice came on the line. She must have been listening. Kiara, darling. Listen to me. You're confused. You're having an episode. Bring the folder back. We can sit down and have wine and talk this over. We love you. We just want to help you understand the finances. You're not good with numbers, remember? I'm good with numbers, I said. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and the numbers say you are thieves. We are coming over, Anthony said. His voice was low and threatening. We are coming to get Noah. And we are coming to get that folder. If you don't give it to us, I'm calling the police and reporting you for domestic theft. Come on over, Dad shouted from the other side of the kitchen. The coffee is on. Anthony hung up. I looked at Dad. They're coming. Let's get ready, Dad said. The sun had gone down. Outside, the crickets were chirping, oblivious to the war that was about to happen in my father's living room. Dad didn't call his deputies yet. He said he wanted to give Anthony one chance to hang himself. If we arrest him now, Dad said, it goes to court. It takes months. Lawyers get involved. He might get bail. He might hide the rest of the money. We need a confession, or we need him to panic and give it back. He won't give it back, I said. He's too greedy. He's a coward, Dad corrected. Bullies are always cowards when the victim stands up. We waited. I put Noah to sleep in the back bedroom, my old room. I put a chair under the doorknob just in case. At 8:30 p.m., headlights swept across the front window. I sat on the couch. Dad sat in his recliner. The blue folder was on the coffee table between us. The knocking wasn't polite. It was pounding. Dad got up and opened the door. Anthony and Susan stormed in. They didn't wait to be invited. They marched into the living room like they owned it. Anthony looked disheveled. His hair was messy. He was sweating. Susan looked perfect as always, but her eyes were darting around the room, looking for the folder. She spotted it immediately. There it is, she said, reaching for it. Don't touch it, I said. I didn't shout. I didn't stand up. I just said it. Susan froze. She looked at me. She wasn't used to me speaking like that. She was used to me shrinking. Kiara, Anthony said. He tried to put on his reasonable husband face. This has gone far enough. You've had your tantrum. You've upset my mother. Now give me the papers, get Noah, and let's go home. I'm willing to forget this ever happened. You're willing to forget? I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. I bet you are. I picked up the folder. I know about the car, Anthony. I know about the trust fund. I know about the loan. Anthony's face twitched. I told you, those are complex financial maneuvers. You don't understand business. I understand that forging a signature is a felony, Dad said from the doorway. He had locked the front door and was leaning against it. Anthony spun around. This is a civil matter, Frank. Stay out of it. It's a criminal matter, Dad said. I made some calls while you were driving over. I called Jerry at the auto shop. He said he never saw a Honda CR-V. I called the bank manager at the local branch. He was very interested to hear that Kiara never signed that withdrawal slip. You called the bank? Susan's voice was high and thin. I did, Dad said, and I told them to freeze the accounts pending a fraud investigation. Susan grabbed Anthony's arm. He froze the accounts. Anthony, my direct deposit goes in there tomorrow. Shut up, Mom, Anthony snapped. He turned to me. The mask was gone. He looked desperate. Kiara, listen, we can fix this, okay? Maybe I borrowed some money, but I was going to pay it back. The investment, it's going to pay off big next month, I swear. I was doing it for us to surprise you. Surprise me, I asked, by selling my car, by putting me $40,000 in debt. I had to, Anthony yelled. We have expenses, you don't work, you just sit at home all day. Do you know how much it costs to maintain that house, to maintain our lifestyle? Our lifestyle? I stood up. I didn't ask for that house. I didn't ask for the expensive furniture. I wanted a simple life. You wanted the showpiece. I deserve the best, Anthony screamed. I work hard, and you're nothing without me. You're a dropout librarian with a kid. Who's going to want you? You have no money. You have no car. You're trapped, Kiara. Even if you leave, you're ruined. I made sure of it. The room went silent. He had admitted it. I made sure of it. Dad pulled his phone out of his pocket. The screen was glowing. Did you get that? Dad asked. I got it, a voice said from the phone. It was the district attorney on speaker. Anthony's knees buckled. He looked at the phone. He looked at Dad. You recorded me. I'm a cop, Dad said. I collect evidence. Dad walked over to the coffee table. He picked up the folder and handed it to me. It's your call, Kiara, Dad said. We have him on tape. We have the documents. We can arrest him right now. Or, Dad looked at me. He was giving me the power. He was letting me decide the ending. I looked at Anthony. He was trembling. He looked young and pathetic. Or what? Anthony whispered. I took a deep breath. Or you fix it, I said. Anthony blinked. What? I want everything back, I said, by tomorrow morning. I can't, Anthony stammered. The money is tied up, it's gone. Then sell the boat, I said. Sell your truck, sell your watch, I don't care. I stepped closer to him. I want the $40,000 for the trust fund back in an account in my name only. I want the $18,500 for the car. I want the $4,500 for my savings. That's over $60,000. Susan shrieked. We don't have that liquid. Then you better find it, I said calmly. Ask your friends, take out a loan, I don't care. I held up the folder. If the money isn't in my account by 9 a.m. tomorrow, I walk this folder into the police station and I press charges for everything. Grand theft, forgery, identity theft, fraud. You'll go to prison for 10 years, Anthony, and Susan, you'll go too for being an accomplice. Anthony looked at Susan. They were trapped, they knew it. And one more thing, I said. What? Anthony asked, his head hanging low. I want a divorce. Uncontested. You sign the papers. You give me full custody of Noah. You pay child support. And you never, ever come near us again. You can't take my son, Anthony whispered. But there was no fight left in him. You didn't want a son, I said. You wanted a possession. You wanted a prop for your perfect family photo. But the photo is ripped, Anthony, it's over. I pointed to the door. Get out of my father's house. Anthony looked at me one last time. He didn't see the scared girl who asked permission to buy milk anymore. He saw a stranger. He turned and walked out the door. Susan followed him, sobbing quietly about her reputation. Dad closed the door and locked it. The deadbolt clicked. It was the loudest, most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Do you think they'll pay? Dad asked. They're greedy, I said. But they're more afraid of jail than they are of losing money. They'll pay. I sat back down on the couch. My legs finally gave out. I started to cry, not soft crying. Hard, racking sobs. I cried for the girl I was 2 years ago. I cried for the car I loved. I cried for the time I lost. Dad sat next to me and put his arm around my shoulders. He didn't say anything. He just let me cry. I was broke. I was single. I was starting over from zero. But I had the keys to my own life again. And that was worth more than any trust fund. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand, watching the minutes tick by. 8:58 a.m. 8:59 a.m. If the money didn't appear, I was ready to go to the station. I had the folder packed. Dad had his uniform on. At 9:01 a.m., my phone buzzed. I opened the banking app. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was from adrenaline. Deposit received, $63,000. Source, A. Miller. I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He had done it. I didn't know how. Maybe he sold the boat. Maybe he borrowed from his rich friends. Maybe Susan emptied her retirement account. I didn't care. I immediately transferred every cent into a new account I had opened that morning online, an account with only my name on it. Then I paid the loan shark. Click, $40,000 gone. The debt that had been hanging over my head like a guillotine was vanished. I paid off the credit card Susan had used. Click, $5,000 gone. I was left with about $18,000. It wasn't a fortune. It wasn't the comfortable life I had left behind. But it was clean money. It was mine. 2 days later, Anthony signed the divorce papers. He didn't argue. He didn't fight for custody. He was too terrified that I would change my mind and go to the district attorney. He signed away his rights to Noah in exchange for his freedom. He chose himself. He always chose himself. A month later, I stood in the middle of a living room. It was tiny. The carpet was beige and a little worn. The window looked out onto a parking lot, not a manicured garden. It's small, the landlord said, scratching his chin. And the radiator clanks in the winter. I'll take it, I said. Don't you want to check the water pressure? Does the door lock? I asked. He nodded. Deadbolt and chain. Then I'll take it. Moving in was strange. I had no furniture. Dad gave me an old mattress. I bought a second-hand crib for Noah. We ate pizza on the floor for the first week. But the silence was different here. In Anthony's house, the silence was heavy. It was a silence where you were waiting to be criticized. Here, the silence was peaceful. It was just me and my son. I remember the first time I went grocery shopping alone. I walked into the store with my own debit card in my pocket. I bought milk, I bought bread, and then I saw a box of chocolate-covered almonds. Anthony hated almonds. He said they were a waste of money. I grabbed the box and threw it in the cart. When I got to the register, my heart started pounding. I had a flashback. I expected the card to be declined. I expected a text from Anthony asking what I was buying. I swiped the card. Approved. I walked out to the parking lot. I didn't have a car yet. I was saving for a used sedan, so I walked to the bus stop. It was raining. I was carrying 3 bags of groceries and a toddler. I was wet, tired, and waiting for a public bus. A woman next to me looked at me with pity. "Rough day?" she asked. I looked at her. Rainwater was dripping off my nose. My arms ached. "No," I smiled. "This is the best day of my life." She looked confused, but I didn't explain. She couldn't understand. I wasn't just waiting for a bus. I was standing on my own 2 feet. Susan disappeared. Rumor in town was that she moved to Florida to live with her sister because the scandal was too much. The neighbors talked. Small towns always talk. They whispered that Anthony's business was struggling, that he had sold his big truck. I didn't care. I didn't ask. I blocked their numbers. I blocked their emails. I got my job back at the library. The head librarian, Mrs. Gable, hugged me when I walked in. "We missed you, Kiara," she said. "We thought you just didn't like us anymore." "I was lost," I said simply, "but I found my way back. Every paycheck I earned, I kept. Every decision I made, I owned. If the dishes were dirty, it was because I was tired, not because I was lazy. If the bills were late, it was my mistake to fix. I was rebuilding my credit score, point by point. It was slow work. It was hard work. But every point was a brick in a wall that Anthony could never knock down again. Tonight, I just put Noah to bed. He's 3 now. He doesn't ask about his father anymore. He remembers a man who was always on his phone, a man who didn't like noise. Now, he has a grandfather who plays trucks with him on the floor until his knees crack. I am sitting on my second-hand balcony, which is really just a fire escape, drinking a cup of tea. The city sounds are loud. Sirens, traffic, people shouting. It's not the quiet, protected suburbs. For a long time, I felt stupid. That's the hardest part to admit. I looked back at the last 2 years and thought, how did I let that happen? I'm an educated woman, I'm strong. How did I let them take my keys? How did I let them take my mind? But I realized something important. Abuse doesn't always look like a bruised eye. It doesn't always sound like a scream. Sometimes, abuse looks like help. Let me handle the bills so you don't worry. Let me drive so you can rest. Let's stay home so you're safe. It sounds like love. It feels like a warm blanket. But slowly, the blanket gets tighter and tighter until you can't move your arms. And by the time you realize you're suffocating, they have taken the scissors. I wasn't weak for staying. I was hopeful. I wanted to believe that my husband wanted to take care of me. I wanted to believe that family meant support. But control is not care. And isolation is not protection. I look at my keychain on the table. There are 3 keys. 1 for the apartment building, 1 for my unit, and 1 for the 2015 Toyota Corolla I bought last week. They are just pieces of metal. But to me, they are heavy. They weigh as much as my dignity. Anthony told me I was ungrateful. He told me I had a perfect life in a golden cage. He was right about the cage. He was wrong about the gratitude. I was never grateful for the cage. I was just afraid of the fall if I tried to fly. But I jumped. And I didn't fall. I landed. I want to say this to anyone listening who feels small right now. To anyone who has to ask permission to spend their own money. To anyone who has to explain why they took 20 minutes to get milk instead of 10. To anyone whose partner tracks their phone for safety. You are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are being erased. They tell you that you can't survive without them. They tell you the world is too scary, too hard, too expensive. They are lying. The world is hard, yes. Rent is expensive. Being a single parent is exhausting. But I would rather work 3 jobs and sleep on a mattress on the floor than ever hand my keys to someone else again. I would rather be tired and free than rested and owned. You don't owe them your loyalty. You don't owe them your silence. You owe yourself the courage to walk out that door. Tell me where you're listening from in the comments. And tell me, have you ever had to fight your way out of someone else's version of protection? I want to hear your story. Because telling it is the first step to being free.